All right, let's talk about this article from Life Science via Yahoo News by Harry Baker, published July  21st, 2023. Science supersedes creationism, Einstein said. Einstein tells religious students in newly revealed letter. This was a letter that Einstein sent to a teacher who wrote him and has recently been put up for sale for $125,000. Um, a teacher wrote Einstein and asked if he could tell them basically his thoughts on God and how that coexists with science. And Einstein responded saying, uh, basically that science does not refute the religious attitude, but in a certain sense replaces and supersedes it. He also had more to say, and he said, as long as the stories in the Bible have been taken literally, it was obvious what kind of faith was expected from the readers. If you are, however, to interpret the Bible symbolically, metaphorically, it is not clear anymore whether God is in fact to be thought of as a person, which is somehow analogous to humans. In that case, it is difficult to assess what remains of the faith in its original sense. And this kind of echoes his thoughts about God and science from some other letters that he has as well. I'm going to kick it over to Cynthia first.
Oh my goodness. So we are talking about some old letters that have been dusted off from Einstein himself. And boy, did you say $125,000 is going up for
Yeah,
sale?
yeah, yeah.
Give me 10%. Pun intended. Oh my goodness. But I'm going to go ahead and after my terrible pun, Teo, because you, the residential cartoon that is south of us. What are your thoughts when you actually read the article?
Oh yeah, this is one Einstein, the smartest guy from their time apparently. I tend to fight against misinformation, so I always have to clarify a lot about Einstein because many believers love to think that Einstein was quotation mark on their side, that he was a believer just like them, only because when asked about God, he answered that he believed in Spinoza's God. And if you know anything about Spinoza's God, that is just a very condescending way of saying, I don't believe in a God. Don't ask me stupid things. But yeah, it's like, no, God is everything, is the universe, is everything that is around us, is the matter, is the universe. Yeah, it means I don't believe in a God, guys. And yeah, this letter now it's interesting to read. Um, I have I have spoken many times about that class where Einstein supposedly said, "Oh yeah, evil is just the absence of God in humans' hearts." He never said anything like that. Actually, Einstein was well known for rejecting the idea of a personal God, a God able to intervene or to, interact with people, to hear prayers or all of that. There was a letter written to the philosopher. I'm going to butcher this name. Eric Gatkind or Gatkind. In 1954, Einstein wrote, "The word God is for me nothing more than the expression and product of human weakness. The Bible, a collection of honorable but still primitive legends, which are nevertheless pretty childish." And the first time that I read this was like, what? Einstein thinking the same way that I do? Interesting, except for the honorable part. I disagree with that. But that's it. We already know that Einstein was not a believer. We already know that he dismissed all the belief as legends and myths that shouldn't be taken seriously. Why do you still have to teach people about these things? All right, because we have to teach this to the same people who believe that there was a world flat, that the world was created in 6 days, and evolution is not real. Those silly beliefs. Well, I hope that they start reading this new letter from Einstein and they don't start trying to find an excuse to say, no, 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 when he's dismissing the creation, he's actually supporting the creation or something like that. You know how some people are.
No doubt.
It's like they make up things to suit their own narrative. Perish
Oh
the thought. What?
my
No,
Who's
gosh.
who's
no, no,
clutching their imaginary pearls right now?
Wash your mouth out with soap.
I know. I'll go ahead and do that, but I'm going to let you go ahead and talk first, Infidel, before I go to the bathroom and do such thing.
Well, I first have to start off with admitting that despite the assertions of many theists I've come across, I don't have a shrine to science, nor do I worship science's prophets. I believe those behaviors are the ones with gods, prophets, and empty promises. Now, Einstein did have a significant impact on his field, but he was one of many. I don't think any of us stopped attending church because we learned about Einstein in school. For me,
Speak
that was the
for
Bible that
yourself.
did that. Okay,
Speak for yourself.
sorry. Okay, all of us, probably except Cynthia, didn't quit going to church because of Einstein. But it is interesting, as Teo noted, that he really pretty much said that if you take it and remove literal faith, it's pretty much metaphors with nothing left, just stories and words without context. Pretty much sounds like religion. Now, I have to admit, he was a lot nicer in this letter to the religious studies teacher than I would have been. To me, it would have been a very short letter, and they probably wouldn't have been able to sell it for anything because it would have just said, "Your God is not real." But I did notice that Nathan Robb, he's the one who's head of the curator of the one selling it, says not only was this letter written by Albert Einstein, one of the greatest figures and scientists of all times, it speaks to the ongoing powerful debate between science and religion. I've got to say, I don't see a debate at all. This is not a dichotomy. Religion may be literature or even sociological in nature, but it's not even remotely comparable to rigorous science. Religion tells stories. Science observes and tests to find quantifiable data. I think it does a disservice to science to treat them as equals, because for me, myths do not deserve a seat at the adult table. Any thoughts, Timothy?
Yeah, I have a few. So, when I was reading this, I had a few thoughts, and one of them was that I don't want to commit an appeal to authority fallacy and say, like, this letter from Einstein proves something previously unproven or anything like that. But I will say that in this letter, he confirms and reiterates an important point, that the goal of science isn't to refute religion, as many religious people think. It's simply, by its nature, replaces it and supersedes it. Many religious people see science as antithetical to their faith and as an enemy or something they have to oppose. We see this all the time. I see this all the time with apologists accusing atheists or non-believers of scientism. You may have seen this. And having faith in things like the theory of evolution, you'll always see them say, like, that's your religion, is, evolution and science, or something in the way, the same way a fanatical religious person might have faith in their belief. It just goes to show that religious people always see progress and truth as the enemy, and always have. There's a large contingent of people who see such things as a theory of evolution as the devil's attempt to get people to lose faith in God instead of a true, verified, confirmed, factual theory based on scientific evidence.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was just thinking about, I was in was it a debate? Sure, let's call it that. In an informal debate with a colleague of mine concerning, some political subject matters, and then we got onto the whole COVID-19 debate and some of the different events that happened as vaccines were developed, and also congressional hearings about, did the coronavirus, COVID-19 specifically, emerge from a lab in Wuhan, or was it something that happened specifically in nature? And one of the things that I told the person, that in my own research and listening to different sides of the argument concerning this whole subject matter, is that all the things that were specifically said about where this particular virus came from versus who lied about it versus who got big money from it have not been verified. So if they haven't been verified to be true, with evidence, empirical evidence, why should I waste gray matter in believing the conspiracy theory? And I was told, believe what you want to believe. And I was like, no. I don't do belief.
Ugh.
I don't do belief. As my partner says, beliefs are for children who want to go see Santa Claus during Christmas. I don't do belief. I do. I have. I want to do things that have been verified, justified verification using falsifiable methods. That is what I. And then once that happens, I can say if such thing is fact or not, right? And I think that this is something that we can take as far as like an aside when it comes to Einstein and other scientists too, who happen to want to use data through methodologies with the scientific method per se, specifically in order for them to come up with testing hypotheses to see if they turn into theories or if we can actually say that this is a law. It never changes, no matter what. This is what it is, like physical law. And one of the things that I would even say, even when I believe the person who wrote the letter, their religious studies teacher who happened to be Jewish, I believe her name was Monk, Miss Monk, um,
Yes.
Yep.
basically said, "Well, do you believe?" And he was like, "Nah."
Yeah.
Nah.
Right.
And per se, when he said like, super science actually supersedes creationism, is because that a lot of things that we have attributed to supernaturalism, deities, God playing footsies with us, gets once we actually have like a natural explanation, it actually cuts out any type of God or supernatural um, explanation for it. And so I don't, and then I know that like of course, especially being part of the ACA and listening to different people who have called into the atheist experience, Talk Heathen, and even Truth Wanted, that we still have folks who would equivocate atheists who happen to listen more so to a preponderance of science more so than they would a pastor or preacher or even the Bible, that we're using science as a religion. And I was like, no,
Mhm.
no, science is not a religion, and atheism is not a religion. It's just a question to one thing: do you believe in a god or gods? And the majority of
Mhm.
us who will say that based on a lack of evidence to support a god or god existing, I don't. And in this particular case, when we're saying, when I'm believing that when Einstein is saying this, that based on the lack of evidence, no, I don't. And especially that I have participated in experiments that actually show natural reasons for things that we used to attribute to God. But I'm going to stop right there because I'm not a scientist. I'm not even an Einstein in 9999999. He did some cool things. He had crazy hair like me, but at the same time, I did want to ask you guys because there was a specific quote that was in the article that was attributed to another letter that he wrote, where he said that as long as the stories in the Bible have been taken literally, it was obvious what kind of faith was expected
Yep.
from the readers. If you are, however, to interpret the Bible symbolically, metaphorically, it is not clear anymore whether God is in fact to be thought of as a person and therefore not a monotheistic deity, which is somehow analogous, I can never say that word,
You got it.
analogous,
You got it. You got it.
analogous,
It's an
whatever,
analogy.
analogous to humans. Oh, that was so terrible. We're gonna fix
You
that
did
in
great.
post. Einstein wrote, in that case, it is difficult to assess what remains of the faith its original sense. Now, when you all hear that, and I believe that it was written, that it was read before, is this something that you agree with when it comes agree with Einstein? And if you do or don't, why or not? I'm gonna start with Tay and just go down the line.
I mean, yes, I totally agree with him. I guess I want to go with what the guy said about not being, scientificist, like not worshiping people who were just smart. I mean, Einstein could be saying, you know what, I see no evidence of God, but I'm a Christian, therefore I believe in Jesus, and that couldn't be evidence in favor of Jesus. So at the same time, he not believing like any perfectly normal, rational being, human being that most scientists are, it's just not evidence against a God. It's just means that believers don't have, a false tool to say, yeah, Einstein believed, therefore, as he was very smart, this must be an evidence in favor of God. I like that we have the tools like this letter to say that's a lie, that's not true, because I guess we can understand that, yeah, Einstein believing or not believing in God doesn't prove anything, but many people who are not very honest when they try to prove their existence of their God do not understand that. That's why I want to congratulate the guys who in here who said that, yeah, we don't worship Einstein. We don't. I personally don't really care much about his beliefs, but I like to know that we have this confirmation of what we already knew, that he didn't believe in any god or stuff like that. And I think I went on a tangent and I didn't answer your question. If I didn't, you can repeat it.
No, you're fine.
No, okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay, we do tangents here. It's all good. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, and I know especially for me, leaving religion, the unraveling began with taking things metaphorically, right? Well, I can't find it within myself to believe the 6-day creation account and to believe a lot of the stories in Genesis, the flood. You start rationalizing around these things. Maybe the flood was a metaphor, an analogy, a myth. What else was? Why wouldn't the resurrection of Christ also be an analogy, a myth, a metaphor? If this wasn't real, then can I call myself a Christian? Do I actually believe this? Do I actually believe any of this? I know for a lot of people that starts the unraveling, and some people are very comfortable not thinking about this stuff. I know probably the majority of Christians, like 90% of Christians, would probably say, yeah, a lot of Genesis is metaphorical, but I believe in the resurrection of Christ, and they would find no inconsistency in that. I know that that's probably the majority of Christians. They don't do a lot of thinking beyond that, and that's why they're still Christians, because once you start applying critical thought to what can I even consider real about my faith, it quickly unravels.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Okay.
Dr. William Lane Craig says that. Like, he attributes like at least about a good portion of Genesis and a lot of the supernatural happenings of the Old Testament to myth or metaphor, but
Mhm.
still believes that, the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and therefore that's why he's a Christian. Even though
Yeah.
like there's like no good evidence to even support a death and resurrection of
Right.
in any person. I don't care how many
Mhm.
times that you may have watched like a video from the 700 Club. That
Mhm.
guy's dead too. But I'm gonna start my rant. Infidel, your thoughts?
Well, first, I want to say that you got me nervous there for a little bit because I thought you were going to say something like Santa wasn't real when you talked about your partner and the belief part. So you did get me more than a little bit unsettled there.
I'm so sorry.
But I'm getting over it. I'm a little emotional, but I can handle it.
Okay.
But it is a valid point because the truth is that whether Einstein believed in 20 gods or no gods, it really doesn't have any bearing on me today. It is interesting, and I am glad that we see further clarification of his position being far more distant than there's an attempt to rationalize things. But for me, I wasn't raised young Earth. I also knew evolution. I accepted evolution, and Timothy's exactly right because those things stewed for a long time. But when I really started stepping back and going, okay, if this isn't true, what else isn't true? And then when you
Mm,
start taking more and more metaphor, you start having to ask yourself, how do I, I don't have the lens that the magic lens that what's his Brigham Young, not Brigham Young, the first guy, the Mormon guy who had the gold goggles that
Joseph Smith.
translated the plate.
yeah,
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 Joseph
yeah.
Smith. Thank you.
Well, you don't
I
believe
don't
in
have
the
those
golden
goggles.
plates? You don't
you know, I just have a
How can you
little bit of
not?
problem with it. You know,
It's written in a
go.
book.
I
Yeah.
lack faith. What can I
A
say?
book
I
says
lack
it's true.
faith.
How can you not believe it? A
I'm
book says
Now,
it's
if you
true.
look down at the bottom of the screen, it'll say infidel.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So, maybe that explains a little bit. But, at the end of the day, I do find this article interesting and definitely a interesting to see where it goes and how people interpret this over the coming years, because it'll be viewed and analyzed at death, because that's, well, what we do. But as Teo, I think all of us have alluded to on some part, except Cynthia, that we don't worship scientists, we don't pray to them, and even though I am lying when I say I don't have a shrine to Einstein, that's just not the way it goes. But I did find it interesting.
I gotcha. Well, dear viewer and listener, if you do find what we say interesting and want to hear more, click here.